Oh, neat. All that fun technology.
Perfect. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our virtual Wilkes-Barre Connect Spotlight Series. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're not familiar with our Spotlight Series events, these series consist of quarterly speaker events that provide us with the opportunity to feature local entrepreneurs, industry leaders, students, nonprofits, and really give them the chance to talk about their businesses and their areas of expertise. And today's spotlight specifically is all about the Great Resignation. We're happy to be hosting this spotlight in coordination with Penn State Wilkes-Barre and Invent Penn State as a part of their Penn State Startup Week. So to that end, this event is structured just a little bit differently than our previous speaker events. Today, we actually have a moderated panel discussion on the Great Resignation and its ties to the rise in entrepreneurship. And we'll be featuring a lot of local industry experts who work in the space every day and can truly speak to the trends that you're going to be hearing about in just a few minutes. So we're really excited to hear their thoughts on this topic, and we encourage you to drop any questions you have for them in the chat, or if you're viewing this on Facebook, we'll be monitoring the comment section there as well for some questions as well, as there will be an additional Q&A portion at the end of the event. But before we jump in, our Wilkes-Barre Connect Spotlight Series events would not be possible without the continued support of Penn State Wilkes-Barre through the Invent Penn State initiative. So at this time, I'd like to welcome our moderator for today's event, Stephanie Gresh, coordinator of Invent Penn State in Wilkes-Barre, to share some opening remarks and kick off our moderated discussion today. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Thanks so much, Shani. Yeah, we're really excited to bring some exciting leaders in this area today to talk about a topic that I think most of us are facing, both positive and negative, and that is the Great Resignation. To kick it off, I just wanted to start by presenting some statistics on what is the Great Resignation to kind of get us all in the right frame of mind. Then I'm going to introduce each one of our panelists and ask them a few questions. And then at the end, I'm hoping to have a very interactive Q&A. So I encourage you to think of questions as you listen to some of their expertise in a variety of different industries and areas. So the Great Resignation got its name in 2021. It was basically look at a massive exodus, as they say, from the workforce, especially in specific industries. But it does hit across every single one of us in some way or shape or form. In July of 2021 alone, there were over 4 million Americans that left their positions, which was a staggering number that had never been seen before, or at least not for, I think it was several decades where it would be that high of a number. There were some other key statistics that came out at the time. Pew Research Center, a very large research center, found that the reasons behind that were lack of pay, burnout was a huge piece, Zoom burnout, both a hybrid and remote work environment that we faced with the pandemic, and then also wanting something new, wanting something that was their own, wanting the flexibility that they gained in some instances from the pandemic, realizing they didn't want to go back to a very structured work environment. So that really rose to the concept of, well, what can I do next? And there's an interesting trend that's coming out, and it's more coming out even so now in 2022 as a result of this. And that is that individuals are starting their own businesses, and they're searching on how to do that, which really provides a great opportunity for all you that are entrepreneurs, but also those that are intrapreneurs, right? Ones that are in their business that maybe want to adjust or move to a different role. Through September of 2021, there were 1.4 million new registered businesses. This is the most of any year, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Another interesting stat at the same time is the search, and they look at what do people mostly search, and they always look at the difference between how to start a business versus how to get a job, which is another key indicator. And they found that the search for how to start a business surpassed how to get a job, and that hadn't happened in a very long time. So all of this is some of it being negative, but some of it being a positive opportunity, which leaves us all to, well, how can we take advantage of this being in the entrepreneurial space? And that's where I'd like to open up our panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly introduce each of the panelists, and we're going to start with a very basic first question. And that is, what do you feel in your industry are the driving factors for the Great Resignation? So I'm going to start first with Steve Blackburn. So Steve Blackburn joins us from LSEO. He is the Chief Operating Officer there. He brings with him years of digital marketing client service experience. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Steve to answer that first question and provide a little bit about his background and experience with the Great Resignation. Steve?
You know, I should be better at this too, but it cut out as soon as you asked the question.
Oh, no.
Technology certainly plays a big part in this.
So the question is, what's your experience with the Great Resignation? Has it hit your business? What were the implications that you're seeing in your field of digital?
Perfect. So I think the Great Resignation has hit everybody. Me being in digital marketing, it has certainly been something that I am close to. Me being a chief operating officer is something that I have to keep my hand on the pulse of at all times. Technology has certainly come to the forefront during the pandemic, and since then the Great Resignation. So it's all about making people, feel together and giving them that sense of purpose, making sure that people feel fulfilled.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm going to turn it over next to Brad Zednick. So Brad Zednick joins us on the panel. He is a part of Invent Penn State, and he is also the innovation strategist for the Nittany Artificial Intelligence Alliance. So he brings a really unique background in some of these disruptive technologies that are coming really rapidly forward and advancing us as we move into the Great Resignation. So I'm going to ask you the same question, Brad, if you want to add anything about your background, and then also your thoughts on factors leading to the Great Resignation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks for inviting me here today. I'm coming from a perspective of engaging, in particular, students already at Penn State. As Stephanie mentioned, I'm part of an organization called the Nittany AI Alliance, which is focused in on preparing our students at Penn State with skills in using some of these new disruptive technologies, artificial intelligence in particular. And when looking at kind of the driving forces for the Great Resignation, there are a few things at play, and a few of them have already been mentioned. The satisfaction with existing job, kind of dealing with some of the monotonous factors of a job and being unsatisfied with those, as well as some of the things that have come in with the pandemic. But I also think there is a deep need in particularly those individuals entering into the workforce right now or recently entered into the workforce for meaning behind their work, not just satisfaction with the day-to-day, but a meaning and a perceived impact in what they're doing. In addition to that, we're seeing a ton of opportunities opening up. And I'll limit myself kind of a technology perspective for a second, because that's where I live day to day. But there are disruptive technologies coming to the fore right now that are providing opportunities to individuals to disrupt markets, to build new business models, to do new things. And when an individual is not necessarily deeply satisfied with what they're doing, and at the same time they're seeing opportunities out there to do something new, a tool or a technology that will allow them to do something that has meaning, that has impact, and they have some control over, I think that is helping to drive particularly early and mid-career individuals to this entrepreneurship space, this startup space, and looking for new opportunities to do something personally meaningful to them.
Thank you so much, Brad. Now I'm going to turn it over to Don Webster, who joins us on the panel. Many of you probably know Don quite well. He's the executive director of TechBridge, which is focused on regional economic development and building entrepreneurship and innovation. So I'm going to ask you the same question.
So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me today. It's an honor to be with you and these panelists. Actually, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up on Brad's comments about meaning and disruptive. I think for me and for many of us, the pandemic was disruptive, right? I think everybody can agree to that. But what I think the pandemic did is it caused people to have a forced reset. And as part of that forced reset, I think people started to give themselves permission to find the meaning that Brad was talking about before. I mean, in a different sort of way, we all began operating in different and new ways. And all of a sudden, I think that people came to realization, hey, wait a second, maybe there's a better way. And when Brad says meaning, I hear purpose. And so I think for many of us, we had an opportunity because we were working differently to begin questioning. And as a result of questioning, I think a lot more people are like, I want to try something new and different. I have passion. I have purpose. I want to follow up on a new opportunity. And I don't really want to go back to the way it was for a whole host of reasons, many of which you identified. So there was this disruptive event. And as a result of a disruptive event, we have all of these new outcomes that I think can be very good in addition to all the challenges that we've had.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Don. I'm going to turn it over to our fourth panelist for today. She joins us, Megan Morgan. She currently serves as the Learning and Development Specialist for Benko Dental. Works a lot with training and development, so she will bring that unique focus to us. And I'm going to ask you the same question, Megan.
Well, I think my perspective is really more from like my personal experience and the evolution of direct employment versus contract work. I started working as a contract employee way before the disruption of COVID and worked for mostly affinity groups and membership organizations that recognize that our clients are almost never where our headquarters are. And wanting to hire talent based on fit and skills more than proximity to the home office. And so, that was ahead of the curve a little bit, I think. That was 9 or 10 years ago when I started in that space and sort of was in that contract type role for a long time until my personal shift to entrepreneurship and then later on to a role at Benko, which was really about discovering that it's no longer just we all work at the pleasure of our employer, but we're trying to find a mutually beneficial relationship. And so sometimes that means that you discover you're either in a contract or a direct employment relationship that just isn't working for the season of life you're in. So in my personal case, it was that we had twins and we already had 2 kids and everybody was really little and I wasn't doing the best. I wasn't doing any of my jobs as well as I had wanted to, either my personal jobs or my professional jobs. And so I sort of took a break to start my own business, do the exact same work I had been doing for a single client to opening it up to a full, any kind of contract opportunity. But then that sort of also evolved as my kids got a little older and I was looking for a better work life balance. And that's what led me to the Benko role, because they really do sort of embody the notion of you have to love this as much as we love it for you. And so to find a direct employment role after being self-employed for kind of a long time, that fit and felt good for the season of life that I was in and am still in with my family is a big win. So sort of just following the evolution of, fit and relationship and season of life, as you should, to make sure that you're doing all of your jobs as well as you can.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And I appreciate all that thought. I saw a couple of themes emerge here, so I want to kind of delve a little bit deeper into those themes. I heard disruptive, I heard different, I heard work-life balance. So I'm going to throw this back to any of our panelists. How do you think we should embrace this? What should we do?
Well, I'll just add that from a as a direct employee, like I mentioned before, working for a company and a team and a manager on a team that really encourages us to talk about what rhythms we need in work and in life to be successful in both is huge, and takes a lot of the, I'll say as a millennial, the pressure off of a millennial and a woman. It takes the pressure off of, the expectation that you should work like you don't have a family and parent like you don't have a job, when you're allowed to say to your manager or client, if you're an entrepreneur and you're supporting client work, just saying, hey, setting the boundaries, or next week is a weird school week for young kids because there's a holiday over the weekend, and many families in this area, at least, they're going to have a few days of closed school. So just being able to sort of lean into that as either as a client or as a direct employer to say, tell me what you need so that we can make sure that you're happy here and continue to do that work, that you're bringing your talent to. So just sort of, it's almost like if the direct employer can continue to be more like a contract opportunity with flexibility and, just recognizing that the employee has changing needs all the time, I think that would help a lot with retention for sure for direct employees.
Megan. Steve, what are you doing unique in LSEO to kind of embrace some of these shifts that are happening? Because I know that had a huge impact, especially in digital marketing when their hours are endless, I would imagine.
Sure. Well, to back up what Megan was kind of saying, I think that the first thing that if you're a direct employer, you have to sit down and think about is an employment agreement is a two-way contract, right? I am asking you for your time, and then I'm giving you something, most of the time in money, for your said time. So I feel like the big shift in everything is, first we have to quantify the problem. What is our turnover rate, and what impact is that having on our key business metrics? And once we do that, I think that we have to identify what's the root cause of those problems and ask yourself, why people are leaving. Is it total compensation? Is it promotions or lack thereof? Is it performance? Is it I'm just putting these goals on people that are unattainable? And am I giving them enough training, or am I not giving them enough training so they're not able to hit these performance metrics that are being held over their head? During the pandemic too, we found out what remote work was, which then has either stayed for some people or transitioned into a hybrid setting. And then I think too, there's a lot of other perks that companies are offering, whether it's, hey, you're an adult, we expect you to do the job, we don't care what time you're doing it, things like that. So I think the big thing is making your business somewhere that someone wants to work, right? I think the jobs report came out just last week, and we're at a 3.6% unemployment rate nationwide. So that's back to January of 2020, before all of this nonsense started. Employees and prospective employees, they hold all of the cards. So we have to do things like pay better, hybrid or remote jobs that give people that flexibility with that work-life balance. I mean, I just saw Goldman Sachs is struggling to get people to return to work. There's not a lot of places that after a year or two, you're making as much money as you do at Goldman Sachs. So people are putting that priority of not wanting to commute, not wanting to put in those additional hours over their paycheck. And that's also being said that we have to put a priority on mental health and wellness. I'm actually working to institute a policy here where I work about vacation time. Now, we have an unlimited PTO policy. My policy is to make sure people are taking enough, because during the pandemic, there was nowhere to go, nothing to do. So people felt obligated to be at work. But if you're only able to give me 70% because you're burnt out, well, 70 times 52 weeks a year isn't going to be as good as giving me, 90% 48 weeks a year. So productivity, I just want to make sure that people aren't burnt out. And then I think we have to focus as well on personal and professional development. Here at LSEO, I have a full-time leadership coach, Dr. Matt Salchik, down at the University of Florida. And what I'm trying to do is set aside time for people to work on some of their pet projects, right? Digital marketing, here in an agency, you have to have sort of an entrepreneurial mindset. But I want my team to kind of identify problems that they have or that customers may have, or whether it's reporting or whatever, and give them time to work on those projects to make their life here at work easier, but not have to do it when they're not being paid. And I think the last thing that we've really had to learn is communication has to be open, it has to be frequent, and it has to be engaging. Engaged employees that are treated as valuable people, not just as a number, are more likely to stay on your payroll, thrive, and grow with you.
Thank you so much, Steve. That sounds like some really excellent ideas. I'm going to twist it a little bit. So I think we got a really good perspective of the employer side from both Megan and Steve. I'm going to turn to both you, Dawn, and Brad, because you deal a lot with students. And I think we may have some students on the call here today as being part of Startup Week. What would you tell students to look for when they're going out to, find a job? Most of them probably with an interest in innovation or entrepreneurship to be an element of that job. What would you tell them to do?
So I'll jump in on that. And part of it is reframing things for them to begin with. That there are no set paths to finding that purpose or meaning that we talked about a little bit earlier, and availing the tools that they need to be able to pursue whatever they're going to pursue, whether it be a startup, an entrepreneurial pursuit, or being able to scratch that itch by entrepreneurism, going into a company and being a change maker there, whether it be a small company or a large company, but helping them to understand what those possibilities are and what the options are, and then also providing them the skill sets necessary to act on any of that. We're part of an Invent Penn State program today. We're in the middle of Startup Week. You can see how we're doing some of those things by trying to provide students with both access to resources and individuals who have experience, and also just opening their eyes to what some of the possibilities are. In addition to that, I think one of the very important things we have to do, and we have to do a better job of here in the higher education space in particular, but education in general, is also providing our students with engaged application opportunities, opportunities to actually do while they're learning, to not be passive consumers of knowledge, but to learn about how to apply those skill sets, to gain experience in doing. Because as they do that, they start to open up their eyes to what some of the possibilities are, particularly in the startup route. One of the things that I run a challenge here at the university where we challenge students to come up with ways to improve the world using artificial intelligence. Part of it is we want to get students using these new AI tools because it's going to impact every industry. But what we're trying to do is get them hands-on with it. We don't want everyone to become a coder or a programmer, but we want everyone to get their hands on these new technologies so they can bring those technologies with them, those new affordances, those new capabilities with them, either to the companies that they work with or to their own startups. And part of what these new tools allow you to do is to get past the mundane, to get past the rote and routine activities that they very often have to engage in, and be able to engage in the things that are personally meaningful to most people. The more in-depth, the more personal, the more interpersonal things that humans are good at. All of us have the experience of having to go through our inbox and responding to 100 emails a day. It is soul-sucking. We all know that. But there are tools available that can help us with that. And so one of the things we have to do on the education side is help students that are graduating and going out into the market to understand what some of these tools are so they can be change makers in the organizations they go to or the organizations they start, to understand how do you still achieve what you need to achieve? How do you still be productive, but be focusing most of your time on those things that are personally meaningful to you and that will build you up rather than the rote and routine things that very often we struggle with right now.
Thanks so much, Brad. But from your perspective, Don, I know you do a lot of business planning competitions and other, great work in this space as well.
So to answer the question around students, although it might apply to aspiring entrepreneurs, the first thing that I would say is don't be afraid to ask for help. And I'll say that again, don't be afraid to ask for help because you don't know all the answers. And frankly, none of us know what we don't know. But what we can do is we can find trusted voices that can help us understand what's the problem we're trying to solve. And I would lead that to my second suggestion for students. What's your dream? I don't think we talk enough to students about what is the dream that you want to dream, because once you decide it, you can do it. But if you don't know it, you're not going to be able to get there. So I really like to talk to students about, I can't make you happy, but I can ask what can bring you joy. What's your passion? What's your purpose? I want to talk to students about that because I think they will be better versions of themselves if they're talking to others about how they achieve those passions and purposes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to pause here and see if the audience has any questions before we move into our next section, which we're going to focus a little bit more on technology. Is there any questions that anyone has at this point? Great. So it doesn't seem there's any questions yet, and we'll definitely have some extra time at the end to address any questions. Doesn't directly have to be on this either topic. We have some really terrific panelists here that can provide some of that, what Dawn is just talking about there, some advice to all of you. So I want to shift a little bit now to technology and its emphasis as we look at entrepreneurship, innovation, especially as we were coming out of this pandemic, and individuals are looking for new opportunities. There's a lot of fear with technology a lot of times as we move from, something we're comfortable with to something that we're not quite sure how it's going to influence us in our lives. So I'm going to ask just a couple questions related to that based upon a variety of backgrounds that we have here. I'm going to start first with Steve, because I know you're directly involved in technology. Just a very basic question. What role do you think technology plays in all this?
Well, I think it plays a role for good and also a role for bad. So I'm going to start with the good stuff. Tools like Zoom, Teams, Meets, Hangouts, whatever they call it now. It gave people the ability to work from home, but still, have those virtual meetings, things like that. Much more of a human connection than sending out emails, memos, etc. And then there was the fun part too, right? When we were trying to do team building and things like that, I think every company out there put up a photo of, and it looked like the Brady Bunch because everybody was on the Zoom at once, and they took the big photo of everybody having a beer, right? We did the virtual happy hours, things like that. But what it really did is it cut down on things like commuting time, and it allowed people to spend more time doing the things that they want to do, whether that's raising a family, learning to crochet and everything in between. But I think that technology also added this instant accountability that was great for the user and the employee. Places like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, they all have people out there talking about how their companies were shifting during the pandemic, the Great Resignation, and everything afterward. On the flip side, it also gave people who were unhappy a soapbox to shout out to the world and let them know, like, hey, my company does not care about my mental health. Here's what they do. And then the company had to be accountable and act upon that. As I said, though, there were some negatives, right? We were, as I believe it was Don said it earlier, we were thrust into this disruption, not by choice. And not everybody was ready. There were frustrations with computers, laptops, tablets, etc. Not everybody was a technological wizard at home. Maybe you used a computer when you were at work. Certainly the demographic of people that I work with were more savvy, but there were a lot of people that got sent home and didn't know what Zoom was, how to use it. Internet network problems. We couldn't then go over to our boss or our supervisor and say, hey, can you have IT stop by my desk, right? They didn't exist. They were at their house. Another big negative that I saw from other people was, especially during the beginning of the pandemic, was people were losing accounts, people were losing jobs. Companies didn't have cash flow on hand to sustain payroll, so they had to make cuts. Well, in order to make money, you had to then try to keep your clients. So if you had a team of, let's just say 20 people, to use a nice round number, and they cut 5 of them, well, now a team of 15 was left to do the work. So the employer a lot of times said, oh, well, you cut down on, 35, 45 an hour each way on your commute time. So they expected you to spend that time on the business, which took away and is the complete opposite of that work-life balance. So I think that people then got sick of this and they quit because they got physically drained. They were putting in 11, 12-hour days when they were only being compensated for 8, and then they got emotionally drained. And then what they figured out was, hey, there's something that's out there that's important to me, and I learned to monetize it, whether it was starting a business, creating content, whether that was a blog, social media. I mean, during all of this, I found out what TikTok was. I won't put up a dance. I don't think any of you would want to see that, but a lot of people then went out, right, and I saw a lot of people start like photography businesses, or during the time off, they found out, hey, this music thing, I'm pretty good at this. And they went into a recording studio and now they cut an LP. You name it, and people started doing it. Not only did they start to do it, but they learned that you can monetize it. So I think technology has really played a big part in this because it put us all together in the snap of a finger.
Thank you so much, Steve. So I kind of seen a trend going here is that we have a lot of people now doing small business. We have a lot, and that ties very nicely to the statistics. And it really impacts a lot of us that were being burnt out. So I guess my next question I'd like to kind of focus on is, what are the skill sets needed for this and how do we embrace it? So I'm going to turn to you, Megan, first. I know you work in learning and development. What do you think the entrepreneurial skills that are really becoming crucial as a result of all this?
Well, so I'll say my thoughts on this are going to be sort of outside of the learning and development Benco land space, just more from experience. But certainly what I do professionally at Benco could be applied to the way you teach anything, making it accessible, consistent messaging. We do a lot of internal e-learning for our associates, and so it's accessible anytime, they can repeat it. So I think accessibility is certainly a top of the heap point to make. But I'll just say from my experience in working in the gig economy pre-COVID, then starting a small business that was thriving in a gig economy was really about super basics. And I would say this is probably especially relevant to students is you think about, okay, what's my dream job? What is the work I like to do? And how am I going to be able to do work I like that matters to me and let me live my life how I want to live it? Anytime I've had that conversation with students or colleagues, I've always started with, do you know what your hourly rate is? Because a lot of times I think people get to a place where they say, yeah, or even for me, when I was doing contract work and leading my own teams, it was, well, sure, you have a skill set that I know is strong. And I have a client who wants support from somebody like you, but do you know what your hourly rate is? And then sometimes the math you get on what my hourly rate is not sustainable because there's taxes to consider. So that may seem like low-hanging fruit to some of us who've been in the gig economy for a long time or leading teams that include contractors. But especially for students or people who are really green in that sort of gig space, it's like you really need to know what your hourly rate is, and you really need to know what your hourly rate is plus 30% so that you can actually make some money in the space that you want to work in. But also, I think really coaching people on the pitch. Pitching is a skill to be developed for sure. Having the resources, is it going to be a deck? Do you have a style guide? This all seems like really obvious stuff to, I think, folks who've got a ton of experience, but for people just starting their new business, it's like, what's your look and feel? What does your pitch deck look like? Where did you get your scope of work? How do you put together an estimate? Is it in a scope or is it in an estimate? Do you refine it once? Do you refine it 3 times? Do you bill for that? Don't you? So it's questions around, billable hours, which I think is also a sort of life question. So something that I did a long time ago when I was doing billable hours for a living was what I wasn't going to spend my billable time on. So I pay an Instacart helper to do all of my grocery shopping and have been for many years, because if you're an hourly employee for yourself even, and you're billing time, you don't want to spend your billable hours running errands for free, which may seem silly, but it was definitely a win for me and for my business. And just also, I think, thinking about resources that maybe aren't circulated as often. So like the Small Business Administration offers the opportunity for women. They have women-owned small business certifications, minority-owned business certifications, military-owned business certifications. And by getting those certifications, you're then in a pipeline for potential government contracts, which may sound like overwhelming, but government contracts can include a Lackawanna County web redesign, and they're going to do an open request for proposals, and they may have to do a certain amount of that business with a minority-owned, military-owned, or women-owned small business. So do you want to get certified? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And going through that process to then hopefully bring in new business that's virtually guaranteed? I say yes, but just even knowing that those sort of avenues for business generation and how to pursue them, respond to RFPs, and just generally how to pitch your business to potential new clients in a way that isn't reinventing the wheel all the time.
Thank you so much, Megan. I'm going to turn over to Don. I see a theme here emerging about resources. I think a lot of times we jump in head first to these opportunities, for small business, or we have an idea. I heard photography earlier, without knowing that there are a lot of great resources in the community that are out there to help entrepreneurship. So Don, what resources, or how do we tell individuals where to find those resources necessary to embrace this type of change that's happening in the workplace?
So that's a great question. That's a hard question too, right? So in thinking about it, the first thing that I would say is get your curiosity on, right? Don't be afraid to be curious, because there are lots of programs. Megan just talked about a couple of very specific ones, but there's lots of programs, there's lots of resources. Maybe there's so many that it gets to be overwhelming. So one, get your curious on, and then I'll go back to the theme that I was talking about before. Talk to your friends, right? Talk to your tribe. Just test drive sort of, hey, what do you know about this? Do you know anything about this? Do you do anything like this? So what would you do? And just gather some data. I think that's the first place. Everybody has their favorites. Go ask people what their favorites are, and then sort of decide how you would wear those favorites, because some of them might not be good for you, but others might be really interesting. So one, get your curious on, because there are lots of opportunities to get in contact with different people that can help make a difference for whatever it is you're doing. And two, talk to your friends or talk to some of those other people, and just get data and just start. Just start.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn that same question over to you, Brad. I see you put in the chat some great resources. I'm going to ask you also, in addition to answering some of where do we find these resources, is how do we engage, whether it's an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, a solopreneur, right? All these terms that are out there for these individuals that are starting businesses or working to, take advantage of technology. How do we keep them engaged, right? So I know resources is one of those avenues, but what are other areas we can do?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting there. So there are a few different things. One of the things, and obviously I'm a biased individual when it comes to this, but one of the things that I see as both a method for engaging individuals as well as providing resources is continuing to go back to the relationship between startups, industry, and higher education. In particular, we here at Penn State, we're a land grant institution. Our mission is to make certain that we're taking the knowledge and skills that are being built up here at the university and pumping them back in particular into the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so there are a ton of resources available here, not just in learning resources and financial resources and things like that, but one of the great untapped resources at the university are our students. Some of the best partnerships that I have seen have been between industry and students here at the university, with our faculty into the mix as well, where students are able to bring in new ideas and a vigor and competency in new tools and technologies, and bring those to problems that small, medium-sized businesses across Pennsylvania are facing. And having those students work with them. And like I said, very often we can also bring faculty into the mix as well to provide some of that assistance. The link that I put in the chat, if you're joining us here on the Zoom session, I put into our chat the resource navigator that Invent Penn State puts out, where they try to bring together resources from across the Commonwealth that can help startups and entrepreneurs in their pursuits. It's many of those resources are from Penn State, some of them are not, but they're all things that can help in your pursuits. And the last thing I'll say is on the budding entrepreneur side, those individuals who haven't gone out and started their startup yet, or haven't begun pursuing their idea, is making certain that we're engaging our students and our individuals who are coming back to reskill, our what is commonly referred to as our non-traditional students, making certain we're engaging those individuals in actual application activities where they are not doing things in abstract outside of context, but doing things that actually are directly leading to and building up their eventual pursuits when they leave our higher education environment. That through their process of reskilling, through their process of education, they are getting their startup started within the confines of a supportive environment, so that when they do step out into the harsh realities of the world with their startup, they've had that support leading up to that. So there are a number of different things that can come to apply to entrepreneurs and startups. But I really think that higher education, and in Pennsylvania, a place like Penn State as a public institution, a land grant institution, can really play a significant role in that.
Thank you, Brad. So we have about 15 minutes left. So at this point, I'm going to kind of just direct a couple questions, and I'm hoping that the audience would have some questions. Again, it doesn't have to be specific to what we're talking about here. You have some really great industry leaders here that answer many of your questions on entrepreneurship innovation. So I guess I will continue to monitor the chat, but I'd like to keep this great conversation going in the meantime. And then, of course, as questions come in, we'll facilitate them in as well. So I'm going to get us a little personal here. I'm sure they're all going to be like, no. And talk to me about how you got into entrepreneurship. I think a lot of times, a lot of these challenges we face as we go into the Great Resignation, and also about the meaning that we put in our lives, comes from our own experiences. So I will start first with you, Don. I see you first up here. How did you get into the entrepreneurship space? What can you tell those out here listening that are thinking about doing that?
So for me, it was choice. We had the opportunity to relocate our family from Northeast Pennsylvania when our bank was acquired. We were actually offered the opportunity to go to New York State or the UK. And we said, no, thanks. We said, we like the lifestyle that we have here. I had formerly commuted 2 hours to Wall Street each way for a number of years. And when we got relocated to Northeast Pennsylvania, my commute was 20 minutes, and I had the opportunity to be home to coach my daughter's softball teams, or I had the opportunity to be home for dinner, which was something that didn't happen when I was commuting to Wall Street. So we kind of like that. And so it was about a choice. And, the thing that I would say, I don't know that we've actually mentioned this so far, but when we talk about change and we talk about entrepreneurship, this stuff's hard. I think that's an important point that we need to tell everybody. This stuff's hard. And so you need to actually have passion for whatever it is you do. And I had passion for starting a business around an area that we thought we were pretty good about, that we could make a difference with. And as a result of that, we put a group together, and we had a ball.
Thanks, Don. How about for you, Steve? What got you where you are?
Well, what got me to where I am is I get to actually help entrepreneurs. I would love, 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 love to do it myself. And hats off to every one of you who have started a business. I don't have the intestinal fortitude. I am one who certainly enjoys getting a steady paycheck. Because rule number one, I think, of entrepreneurship is remember to pay yourself first. Because not everybody is going to be Gary Vee or any of the other entrepreneurs out there. But what I get to do is I get to see some people come in with a great idea. And they are certainly brilliant people, but they don't necessarily know how to tell the world or the internet about their idea. So I get to come in and talk to a lot of people and figure out, well, hey, how can we tell people about this? What's really been fun over the last 2 years is working with young people. So through the group that Don heads up through TechBridge, I have gotten to sit in and mentor some people through the business plan competition, and even meet some people outside of that. And it's incredible how much of how much the young people are going to shape not only this area, but this country and this world. So I love doing marketing because I get to help people take these ideas and stand on top of the mountain and scream them out to the world, and more importantly, to the people that need to hear them.
Thanks, Steve. Brad, same question.
I'm sorry, if you can repeat that question one more time.
Sure. What led you to entrepreneurship and where you are today?
Yes, so for me, quite a bit of it was the fact that I started in the innovation space. My title is actually innovation strategist. I work here at Penn State in trying to find opportunities for students to engage in innovative practices. And you can't work in the innovation space without very quickly starting to move into the startup and entrepreneurship space. Because very often individuals are coming up with ideas and applications of new tools and technologies that simply are not pervasive in the marketplace yet. They have no other outlet for doing what they want to do, finding that meaning for them other than hoeing their own road. And that's exactly what many students have done. So through the 6 years in particular of running our challenge here at the university focused on using artificial intelligence for good, we have had the pleasure of working with a large number of startup organizations and helping students get their own businesses going, helping them navigate through the Invent Penn State network, the network of launch boxes we have across the university, accelerators and the like, to be able to get them going and bring their idea into reality and see the impact of these new and innovative ideas they have beyond an educational exercise, which is good unto itself, but being able to actually bring them into the world and have them being used by real people and changing lives. And so that's kind of the roundabout way that I came into this entrepreneurship space.
Excellent. And then for you, Megan?
I sort of gave the Reader's Digest version when I introduced myself, but it was really just like Dawn, as sort of the evolution of the thoughtfulness around what the family life was going to look like in our family. What did I want to do and did I feel really skilled at that wasn't going to cost me in another area of my life something I was unwilling to pay, essentially. So my husband travels for work a whole lot, and we've moved from Chicago to Tampa to Washington, D.C. to now here in Northeast Pennsylvania. And I was able to take my mind and my laptop, all the places we ever lived, supported my clients all of that time, had 4 kids, moved and bought and sold homes, made new friends, started new places, and sort of just solved for the X of my part of our family economy and, what I wanted to do to feel accomplished. And so for a long time, my contract work was working for organizations that were changing and developing undergraduate students, which I still love to do as a volunteer. And I'll add too, I think, especially for students thinking about, there are things that you will love to do that you'll love so much that you would do for free. And then there are some things that you love to do that you can monetize, and knowing the difference and spending your billable time accordingly is major. So even when I left a role that I loved, I would call it my dream job still to this day, although I do love my job today, but that was the dream job forever. I left it because it just didn't fit the season of our family's life anymore. But now I do it as a volunteer because I still love it that much. So I think really just necessity and being thoughtful about what kind of professional and partner and parent and neighbor and friend I wanted to be really led me to sort of solving for that X as the equation changed, and it does and continues to. And so, and really, like I said, that's what led me to Benco, was realizing that the X was, now I'm looking for consistency, a team, proximity. And so moving away from running my own business full time to being a part of someone else's growing business and family legacy was the right solution to the X of that equation of last year. So
Thank you so much for Megan. So we do have a question in the audience. I think we have enough time to address this. I'm going to open this up to any of our panelists. And that's, what are your thoughts on how to engage youth in innovation and entrepreneurship in early stage learning education, getting them to think outside the box at an earlier age?
Well, it's critical, right? I don't need to say any more.
I'll add as, mom to young people, is that we are really careful about how we talk about what their futures are. So we both loved college. We both have master's degrees in higher ed. We're totally lifetime students. But all 4 of my kids may not be that way. And the young people that we're interacting with it may not be a foregone conclusion that they're going to go to a 4-year institution right at 18 years old, know exactly what they're going to do, go all the way down that rabbit hole and crush it, and then go on to do that very thing. So at least for us, we talk really intentionally about all of the different directions that life can go, how very important trades and trade school is for our, culture and our communities. How very much we loved going to state schools and then going to grad school, and how many other options there are there to sort of engage, younger minds. And what do you want? Let's work backward from what success looks like for you. And if the backward route goes through higher ed or trade school or entrepreneurship, then let's work backwards from, success at the end and see what's the route between here and there.
I agree wholeheartedly with what Megan was saying. There's a reason why children of entrepreneurs are often entrepreneurs. There's a reason why children of teachers are often teachers. We do what we know. We pursue what we know. And so being able to provide a vision of the landscape of options to young people, and this is far before higher education as well, If we're doing that for the first time in the higher education landscape, we're making up for lost time. Letting individuals know what the opportunities are and that those opportunities are open to them. Providing them with role models that look like them. Those individuals who have shared life experiences as mentors and advisors is really critical and important for providing the sense of what can be done. And then going back to what I've said a few times, engaging them. Not doing it in the abstract, not talking about what it could be or a textbook definition, but actually having individuals do something real and become immersed within entrepreneurial pursuits or innovation pursuits is important. And then they'll take that with them, whatever that path is, as Don was saying earlier, whatever that path is that is personally fulfilling to them. And they'll bring those skills with them to whatever that pursuit is.
Thanks. Terrific advice. I really appreciate each and every one of your time here. I think great conversations. How do individuals that are listening today get a hold of all of you and your expertise? What would be the best means of contact if somebody wanted to reach out to any one of you?
I'll make it easy. I'll say LinkedIn.
Okay.
I think that's probably the easiest way today is LinkedIn or, you know, my company keeps my email really easy, steve@lsco.com. Certainly willing to listen and talk to anybody who would like to discuss any of this any further.
In here, I think LinkedIn is the most open door for sure.
And I put my information into the chat. If you're seeing this through Facebook and can't see the chat, LinkedIn, I've got a unique name, so you can find me. I don't know if there are any other Brad Zenix on LinkedIn, but you can also go to the Nittany AI Alliance website, and all of my information is there in the leadership section as well.
I say for myself, I'm also on LinkedIn, and then as the coordinator of the event Penn State at Wilkes-Barre, you can always reach out to me directly at Penn State. And I can always be in touch with any of these individuals to help out as well. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Shawnee for some closing remarks.
I so appreciate your time, Stephanie. Thank you so much for moderating today. You did an amazing job, and really great discussion came out of this. I think these are all incredibly important topics to be discussing as early as the education phase. So I love that you guys touched on all points of the life cycle of where entrepreneurs can be at today. Stephanie, again, thank you so much. Major thank you to Penn State Wilkes-Barre for sponsoring our Spotlight events. We could not do it without your partnership and your support through Invent Penn State. A really big thank you. And a huge thank you to our featured panelists today, Steve, Brad, Megan, Don. Your time is invaluable to us, and we thank you for offering your expertise here today and providing a way for people to continue these types of conversations with you in the future. It really means a lot. And with that concludes our Spotlight Series event for today. Be on the lookout for our next installment in August. And with that, I hope you all stay safe, and thanks so much for joining.